All right, welcome back to a brand new hour of John Bachman Now. Great to have you with us. We're continuing to follow the situation. The presidential race not officially over yet. We have until December 14th until the Electoral College has to certify this thing. And so all these legal challenges have 35 days from now until that deadline so this can all play out. The Trump campaign has filed lawsuits in 6 states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, and Wisconsin. The campaign plans to use obituaries of people who allegedly voted as evidence of widespread voter fraud. You've heard some reports about these Trump rallies that may start back up again. We'll see what comes of that. Meanwhile, here's a look at our electoral map. Remember, we have not called the race for Joe Biden just quite yet, and that's because of what's happening in Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Arizona, all not settled yet, and President Trump says he plans to fight. And then there's the Congress. Democrats do keep control of the House, but Republicans managed to pick up 5 seats in the House. You see just how close things are in the Senate as well. Republicans are expected to retain the majority there, but that'll all depend on what happens in Georgia. 2 special runoff elections coming up in January. You can see that could determine the balance of power in the upper chamber. Today, we're also getting a better idea of how the Trump campaign plans to fight and make sure all the legal ballots are counted. We mentioned those rallies, MAGA rallies, complete with evidence of voter fraud. This according to a new report from Axios. They also say the president is planning on using those obituaries of dead people who allegedly voted to bolster his case. We're a little short on details. Some officials from the Trump campaign say not exactly like the campaign rallies that we're looking at right here. This one from before the election, obviously. They might look more like the boat parades or other type of events that the president would not attend. Now, as we mentioned, one of the states in question right now, Georgia. The Trump campaign filed a lawsuit on Wednesday looking to separate mail-in ballots in Chatham County. That's where Savannah is. They allegedly arrived late from the rest of the ballots. That lawsuit also included an affidavit from a registered poll watcher claiming to witness 53 late arriving ballots being mixed in with other ballots. New today, Georgia Congressman Doug Collins will lead the recount effort in the state of Georgia. Joe Biden currently holds a razor-thin lead over President Trump in that state. Let's talk more about this now with Georgia Congressman Jody Hice. Congressman Hice is a member of the House Government Operations Subcommittee, the ranking member, in fact. And Congressman, great to talk to you again.
Likewise, John. Thanks for having me.
All right, so give us an idea what Congressman Collins is going to be able to do with this recount. I understand the lieutenant governor of Georgia says he has seen no evidence of widespread voting fraud. So what's really going on here?
Well, in the first place, he hasn't seen all the evidence. No one has at this point. All that is still in process of being gathered up, and there are nonetheless a lot of question marks, a lot of potential irregularities, anomalies that are taking place. We know for a fact, for example, that there have been voting machine glitches. Well, up in Michigan, we know those glitches actually impacted an entire election. We want to know, what are those glitches? How severe are they? Also, of course, there have been many reports of poll watchers being kept out of the counting process. The obvious question there is, why would that happen? What, if anything, are they trying to hide? Again, John, all of this comes down to one simple thing, and that is we want an honest election where every true, authentic, legal vote counts and that it is counted accurately and any illegal vote is cast out. That's all we want. And the results will speak for themselves. But America needs and deserves an honest election.
I mean, it's not asking too much, right? That's the real issue here, is maintaining the confidence in our election process. That's really what's at stake.
That's exactly what's at stake. And the reality is, and everyone in America knows, and this is what the fear is, if we lose the integrity of the voting booth, we lose everything in this country. This is the opportunity that we have as citizens of the United States to speak our political opinions in the privacy of a voting booth. And we expect that vote to be authentic, true, legal, and we expect those votes to be counted accurately. And if that is ever lost, we are in big trouble in this country. And so now's the time for everyone to take a deep breath, relax, step back, and let the process be played out, and let's determine just that, the legal votes and the accurate counting.
There's also the Senate races down in Georgia. Republicans incumbent David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler facing off against their Democratic challengers, Ralph Warnock and Jon Ossoff. We know that we're going to see the state of Georgia flooded with outside money. What do you expect President Trump's involvement to be in this? I would imagine Congressman David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler would love to see Donald Trump come to Georgia and stump with them.
And I fully expect that he will. Listen, again, this is the same kind of thing. Everyone knows the importance of the Senate race. If the radical left-wing Democrats right now who are embracing socialism and Marxist-type ideology and radical left-wing policies like the Green New Deal and the like, our country is in big trouble. To maintain control of the Senate at the minimum is extremely important. So all eyes are going to be on Georgia, and every attempt possible to win on both sides is going to be played out. And so I fully would anticipate the president to be here and a host of others. And we're going to see quite a remarkable showing here in Georgia over the next 8 weeks.
Well, I mean, the entire country's attention will be focused on the state of Georgia for this race. It really will be a national race. What are the issues that are going to, determine the outcome here?
Well, I mean, the reality is the issues such as the Democrats are already coming out saying if they have the House, the Senate, and the White House, they, among other things, are going to pack the Supreme Court. They want Washington, D.C. to become a state, so they'll get 2 more senators and another voting member of Congress. They want to do the same thing with Puerto Rico, which obviously would be 2 more Senate. Listen, it's all about radical left-wing socialist Marxist ideology versus American free enterprise capitalism, maximum freedom for the people, and limited government power. And that's really what is at stake here. And it's all going to be hinging on potentially these 2 Senate votes coming up in Georgia.
Stacey Abrams, the loser of the 2018 gubernatorial race in Georgia, is getting a lot of credit, Congressman, for making this thing so close. Is that what happened here? Was her get out the vote effort kind of the difference that made this so close? Or do you think we're going to see a completely different outcome come January when you don't have 2 Senate races happening at the same time with 20 candidates on one of the ballots, confusing a lot of the voters on what the issues are there? Because it's also going to be a lot harder for Ralph Warnock and also for Jon Ossoff to run and hide behind Joe Biden, who wouldn't answer these questions about court packing and fracking before the election. He's obviously, thinks he won now. So what is his excuse? He's going to have to answer these questions. It's going to be, I think, easier for Republicans to put Ossoff and Warnock on, point and say, how do you guys feel about this? Do you agree?
Yeah, I do agree. And I also think it's extremely ironic that someone like Stacey Abrams has literally spent the last 2 years rejecting the results of the election 2 years ago, both her loss as governor and also her loss in the presidential her choice for the presidential race years ago. Listen, she is now demanding President Trump to concede, and for everyone to concede on a race that she herself similarly has not conceded in 2 years. Look, we have a legal process. We have the means to determine exactly the outcome of this race. You look back at Al Gore, he had 30-something days or whatever it is to determine the outcome of his particular race when there was questions involved. And that same, not only courtesy, but the due process it should come into play right now, and I believe it will.
Yeah, you would hope so. The whole thing with Stacey Abrams is interesting, too, considering that she chose not to run for these Senate races, either one of them. And you would think if she really wanted to have the most impact on the state of Georgia, she would actually run again. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do, and perhaps she will at some point. We'll wait and see. But, there's a lot of questions right now. The ballot harvesting, did that occur in Georgia? Certainly those allegations are out there. I don't know if it did or not, but those things need to be answered. We're not supposed to have ballot harvesting here. And yet, under the excuse of COVID-19, we have permitted all sorts of things in this particular election that otherwise would never be acceptable in Georgia or across the country. So have those exceptions been abused? There are some indications that would say, yes, they have been abused, and perhaps even illegally so. Well, let's find out. Let's take the time to do what needs to be done here to, again, make sure that every true, honest vote is counted and every illegal vote is not counted. That's the issue. That's what we've got to protect is our integrity at the voting booth. And that's what we're going to do here in Georgia and hopefully everywhere else in the country.
If nothing else, everyone should be advocating for the protection of the integrity of our voting system. That's really, again, I say this over again, I sound like a broken record, but that's what is at stake here. We can talk about the individuals involved, but the big issue here is making sure our election process is still legitimate in this country. Congressman Hice, we know you're working hard on that. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, the 2020 election, of course, not officially over, but Joe Biden is acting like it. Moving ahead with his transition plans, Biden plans to issue a series of executive orders to undo many of the policies put in place by President Trump during his first term. Biden said his first focus will be the pandemic. He's also already announced a coronavirus advisory board. Other key issues for the Biden administration, they claim, will be economic recovery, racial equality, and climate change. He has also said he will rejoin the Paris Climate Accords and also rejoin the World Health Organization on his first day in the Oval Office. Let's find out more now about all this with Newsmax White House correspondent Emerald Robinson, who joins us from Washington. Hey, Emerald.
Hi, John. Good to see you. And before we get into talking about Biden and what he has to say, I did want to fill you in on some breaking news. The president just tweeted about 10-15 minutes ago that he has fired Department of Defense Secretary Mark Esper, and he has named an acting in place. Of course, we did expect that to happen. Now, in talking about personnel, Joe Biden, as you mentioned, already appeared today in Wilmington, Delaware, to talk about how he plans to handle the coronavirus and to present a front of his transition team in relation to that issue. But, John, there's really not a formal transition underway, and here's why. In a formal transition, it requires that the Government Services Administration, the GSA here, certify the new winner, or who would be the president, and releases government resources, funds, and other resources to that team in order for them to start completing the transition process. The GSA has yet to do that, so that means none of these monies or resources other than money like government ethics checks are available to the Biden camp. Now, in order for that to happen, it requires the GSA administrator, who at this time is a woman named Emily Murphy, to, quote, ascertain that Biden is the winner of the election. She has not done that yet. That would normally in any other election happen today. But from our sources, we're hearing that's not likely to happen anytime soon because of the situation that's going on. As you just mentioned a minute ago, the states have not certified the results of the election. The counts still are occurring, as well as recounts, which you just talked with Congressman Hice about. And so in that situation, even though the GSA is a nonpartisan organization, they just don't feel that it's in the place where they can certify it and start providing those funds to Joe Biden. Now, in talking about Biden's continued messaging on his transition, we're also being told that the Biden camp feels it's very important to try to put this forth as the President Trump and his team continue to conduct legal challenges to the election, saying that this is somewhat of a PR campaign to keep the messaging out there.
Well, it's true.
John?
You know, this is not over until it's all officially certified by the Electoral College. There is a PR aspect of all this. Everyone needs to believe this is going on. But, Emerald, let's go back to what you were reporting. Mark Esper out as the defense secretary. President Trump installing a new defense secretary, acting defense secretary. Mark Esper, there were reports that he had issued a resignation letter. So I guess President Trump didn't want to wait on that, huh?
No, I don't think so. And as we talked about before the election, the president is weighing several personnel changes no matter what happens. So the next shoe to drop could likely be FBI Director Christopher Wray. Newsmax has been told that the president had planned to fire him sometime after the election. How fast? It remains to be seen. But now with the news about Esper, one could surmise that perhaps the president's also thinking about other personnel changes. Of course, Esper and the president fell out earlier in the year in regards to some of the responses to the rioting and looting across the nation in response to the George Floyd death.
Yeah, and that whole issue of President walking across Lafayette Square and what Mark Esper had to say about that with the National Guard, obviously creating some tensions. Yeah, a reminder that President Trump is still the president for 70 days at least, and he's still acting as such. Great to see you, Emerald, as always.
Right.
All right, stay with us. We've got to talk more about the Biden-Harris transition team with political strategist Doug Schoen next.